And in the meantime, Nigeria is one the world's largest producers of crude oil and relies mainly on crude oil export for its foreign exchange earnings. With the volatility in the oil market, experts say it is pertinent for Nigeria to begin to rethink on how to make most of its petroleum resources. Well, joining me now to give us a better understanding of some of the developments in the upstream sector of the oil and gas is the Chief Operating Officer, Ventures and Business Development of the NNPC, Mr. Roland Ewubari. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the show, Mr. Ewubari.
Thank you very much, Obi. Glad to be with you.
Sure. Let me first get your take on the development in the global oil market with OPEC and its allies delaying talks to extend output cut over poor compliance by some producers. And what's this report about Nigeria not complying with the output cut, even though the Minister of State for Petroleum had mentioned that Nigeria has met its production cut? What will these mean for Nigeria's production output target?
Thank you very much, Obi. Excellent question to begin our conversation. So the minister is correct in terms of what he's put out to the world about our current compliance status. And I believe the GMD of NNPC also reiterated that point on a call with Bloomberg yesterday. There's some confusion in the market around the production parameters and what exactly goes into the cuts. We at full capacity do about 2.3 million barrels a day, all right, fully loaded. We're currently doing about 1.6, 1.7 million barrels. OPEC cuts ascribed to us as a result of the last decisions taken was supposed to be about 1.4, all right? Now, you and I know that condensates are not included in the numeration and counting of the cut numbers. So 1.4 pure oil we certainly have met. The little you see over above 1.4 does not count as part of the basis for assessing our OPEC quota. So the minister and the GMD are both on the money. They're correct. We are in compliance. The numbers come in on a rolling basis, and as we present the full spectrum of information to the market and to OPEC, this misguided nuance about Nigeria not being in compliance will be dispelled. That's my belief.
Okay, now we have seen the volatility in oil prices, and for Nigeria to maximize the situation to its advantage, there is need for the cost of production to come down. Now, the GMD of the NNPC has always talked about the need to reduce the cost of production. Can you tell us why the cost of production is high in the first place?
Thank you, Obi. So our business is a very simple one, really, all right? We extract the resource from the ground, we sell it, or we put it in storage. It's that simple. All right. Now, because of the different terrains and environments within which we operate in Nigeria, there are peculiarities that are unique to different terrains. I said on a different platform yesterday that very few countries in the world where citizens of the state vandalize and destroy assets that belong to the state and exist for their common benefit. All right. So when we talk about costs, there are different elements that go into those costs. We start with the simple one, which is staff costs, for example. I can tell you that the fully loaded costs of personnel in the Nigerian oil and gas basin is probably one of the highest in the world. All right. But we operate in a country where there's high unemployment, so we're not inclined to go around laying off people to reduce costs, because that just increases unemployment and creates knock-on problems for the economy. But there are some certain aspects of our cost profile that we believe we can address aggressively. A good chunk of our costs come from logistics, security, and transportation charges for the crude to the export terminals. All right, those are the costs that we are relentlessly attacking and trying to drive down, so that we get to a point where our unit operating cost per barrel is sub $10. Today, if I were to move a crew all right, from an NNPC operation, say NPDC or one of our IOC partner operations, Shell or Chevron, move a crew to the Niger Delta to do work. I have to get soldiers to escort them while they're on land. I need Navy patrol boats to stay with them if they are going to be operating in the swamps and creeks. And if it's deep offshore, I even need more naval boats. All of those things cost plenty of money, all right? And those are costs that many other jurisdictions don't have to deal with. You know, these are costs that are unique to our environment. So those variable drivers, ma'am, we are cognizant of, and like I said earlier, we're working relentlessly to bring down those costs. And we believe that by Q4 of next year, ma'am, we'll be able to deliver you oil at sub $10 a barrel.
Okay. Now, the contracting cycle in Nigeria has also been fingered as one of the reasons for high costs of crude oil production. How do you intend to correct this anomaly?
So that issue was a ripe issue a few years ago. I don't believe it's a real relevant one anymore, and I'll tell you why. We recognized about 4 or 5 years ago that the contracting cycle made no sense. You start a tender process for goods or services, and it will take you 3 or 4 years to conclude. You certainly can't operate that way. It's not efficient and doesn't make any commercial sense. So we then, came up with different ideas to contract to sort of contract the contracting cycle. And I was in charge of that process for 2 years. I ran NAPIMS, which manages our joint venture relations, for 2 years, and that was the one item on my agenda that I focused on, with pinpoint precision. And I can tell you very, very confidently that before I left NAPIMS, we ran some very major tenders, start to finish, in less than 6 months. So that narrative about contracting cycle is an ancient script. It's not relevant in today's NNPC. We were able to start and finish our transactions within a time frame that makes sense.
Okay. Now, before now, oil-producing countries are not so many, but today, many African countries are discovering and, of course, producing oil. So there's a lot of competition. And here in Nigeria, there has been a slowdown in investments, particularly in the upstream sector. How do we begin to attract those international oil capital into the country?
Superb question you just asked, Toby. The truth of the matter is, I always tell people that the technology and capital you need to do significant investments significant development in the oil and gas space does not exist in Africa, doesn't exist in Nigeria, certainly. All right, it has to come from the rest of the globe. Those are the guys who have the money and the technology to help us unlock the resources that we've been endowed with as a country. A couple of years ago, you're right. In Africa, for example, you had oil in Nigeria, in Libya, Angola, where else? Not that many basins. But today, there's oil in Somalia, Sudan, Ghana, Mozambique. Everywhere has oil. So we are now locked in mortal combat, all right, for the global investment dollars around the oil and gas space. The only way we can attract investments, ma'am, is for us to remain competitive. We've got to put a fiscal regime on the table that enables global investors to bring in their capital, all right? That capital has to be protected. Capital has to be safe. We've got to have institutions around dispute resolution, good courts, good off-court type system, so that if there's any, issue, you can resolve very quickly. You need to have a fiscal regime in place that enables them derive a benefit for every dollar invested, and that benefit that they derive has to be over and above what they will get in a comparable basin elsewhere in Africa or outside of Africa. Now, the problem we've had with attracting investments is that we haven't put a properly structured, comprehensive piece of legislation in place to address the multiplicity of issues that confront us in this environment. All right, there's agitation in the Niger Delta. So, what's your solution to host community problems? All right, you've got to write it. It's gone beyond a lip service. You have to write a law now to talk about how you carry those communities along as you extract resources from their domains. You have to have legislation written that explains to the guy bringing in his global capital that while drilling for oil, if he finds gas, all right, X percent is his share of the gas take. You have to put in legislation that describes how this industry will be regulated. Are you going to keep, is DPR as currently set up? Is it fit for purpose? Do you need a National Petroleum Commission or not? NNPC, are there some things you should be doing? Are there some other things you shouldn't be doing? All of that in a comprehensive legislation needs to be in place. Now, we announced to the world maybe 20 years ago that we're going to do a PIB. We haven't done it. And until we do it, people don't like uncertainty. Investors don't invest where there's uncertainty. So as soon as we resolve the petroleum legislation, I believe we'll attract more global capital to our space.
Now, in your estimation, could you quantify what Nigeria may have lost due to non-passage of the PIB?
That's a tough one. I don't know what exactly we could have lost, but I'll just tell you what the world has been like. So I joined an NPC from the US in 2015, a little over 4 years ago. Now, in that time frame, there's been just under $80 billion of final investment decisions taken in oil and gas in Africa. All right, just about 80 billion. Now, the totality of that amount, only 2% of that came to Nigeria. The rest of it went elsewhere. The only major deal that we've been able to close is the NLNG Train 7, which is a pretty big transaction. It's pretty significant. But other than Train 7, if you track back to say end of 2019, nothing major had come into Nigeria in the last couple of years. And again, it's because there's still way too much uncertainty in the investment environment.
All right, now, what exactly is the story behind the $2.8 billion AKK pipeline? Now, some critics argue the pipeline is only strategic to the economy of the North.
I think that's an uncharitable statement to make. Last I checked, Nigeria is a federation comprised of 36 states. I don't like getting into conversations around, it's beneficial to the North, East, Southwest, because, that's just my own personal position. My father was a general in the Nigerian Army. I lived all over Nigeria. I see myself, inside out as a green, white, green child. So Nigeria is Nigeria as far as I'm concerned. The AKK pipeline is a super significant piece of national infrastructure that is long overdue. That line is supposed to take gas from the fields of the Niger Delta through a 600-kilometer line that's going to run from Ajaokuta through Kaduna into Kano. All right, and along that line, the initial plan is to have 3 gas-fired power plants. Total capacity, I think, 3,600 megawatts. Now, think of what 3,600 megawatts would do if you inject that into the national grid today, and this Siemens electrification plan goes according to plan. If you're able to distribute that into the national grid, that's significant power added. You're probably going to double what you have today into the economy. So that benefits everybody. 2, we know for a fact, it's not anecdotal evidence, it's proven that development and prosperity goes with gas infrastructure. So to get to Ajaokuta, you're going to develop infrastructure in the Niger Delta anyway. And then the infrastructure itself from Ajaokuta into Kano. It means you're talking about a line of prosperity beginning in the gas fields in the Niger Delta through the Middle Belt up to the north. That has to be something that every Nigerian ought to support. In any event, we're not funding it with any direct, or that much direct cash. We have a small equity contribution to make. The rest of it is funded on a project finance basis, which means the project itself is supposed to generate the income to repay the loan. All right? So bankers who are bringing their money to the table have clearly done their feasibility, have done their bankability report, and their conclusion has to be that the project is viable. If not, they won't be putting money on the table.
All right.
So it's a very good piece of national infrastructure that deserves the support of every Nigerian.
Okay, so a quick one before I let you go. How exactly will the investment be protected and recouped given the spate of vandalism across our pipelines?
Excellent question. Remember what I said at the beginning that we remain probably one of the very few environments in the world. I think it's us, Bolivia, and maybe Colombia, where citizens actually actively destroy national infrastructure. So vandalism has been a major problem in Nigeria across crude lines and across the product lines that move white products across the country. Now, the current infrastructure you have was put in place many years ago, 70s, 80s, all right? And those lines run on the surface. So if you go to some neighborhoods, even here in Lagos, you see pipelines and people have encroached right of way. They build their homes and churches and mosques around their pipelines and all that. And that's what's led to the ease of vandalism, because you just walk across, puncture a pipeline and siphon products. What we're doing with AKK and other pipeline projects we're working on in NNPC now is to use the benefit of technology and do what we call HDD, so it's horizontal direct drilling. We bury the pipes deep into the ground, all right? So there's nowhere any vandal in Kaduna, Kano, my village of Ovo, anywhere, can access those pipelines anymore. So the problem of vandalization would disappear once and for all once we go HDD, and that's what we're working on. It's very expensive, but it's the only way to go.
All right, let's just hope that happens. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Roland Ewubare. Mr. Ewubare is the Chief Operating Officer, Ventures and Business Development of the NNPC.